And welcome back to the Clear Jets podcast. Where Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Michael, very excited for this preview podcast today. What a big game on Sunday. Jets, Pats, redemption for the game they blew a few weeks ago. And with the Bills loss last Sunday, an opportunity for the Jets to take possession of first place in the AFC East. Who would have thought we'd be at this point exiting the bye? But I'm so excited. And the immortal words of Bart Scott, I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're 6-3 and you're in the middle of the playoff race, every single game is going to be big for the rest of the way. But this one, it just feels like this is going to be the game that kind of sets the stage for the rest of the season. I mean, obviously the standings implications, having already lost to the Patriots, and them being a team that's going to be in the wild card mix, in the division mix. You want to be able to get that separation, avoid that season sweep. And then, just the symbolic aspect of it, the Patriots losing streak, the Gillette losing streak. If you could come out of the bye and, come off a win against the Bills and then end that losing streak, what it would mean from a, poetic standpoint for where this team is at. And it's, in its progression it would mean a lot, and it would be very exciting. And it would put the team in a spot where, you're 7-3. You're 3-1 in the division. You're first place, and puts you in a really great spot going into the rest of the year. So it's a huge game, and that doesn't really need to be said. I think everyone understands that, but there are heavy implications at stake this week.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to overvalue a single game, but going back to the last time the Jets were even remotely good or in playoff contention, 2015, they blew those two games to the Bills, who they were better than. The Bills, I think, finished like 7-9 that year. And if the Jets had won one of those games, they would have made the playoffs. And if they'd won both, they would have been first place in the AFC. And, that year, 2015, was kind of a weird one. Maybe the Jets would have a shot. So these games, when you look back, especially the division ones or these AFC ones, and like I said, it's just such a tight race. You never know. But at the same time, yes, the Jets could lose this one, bounce back next week against the Bears and get this thing back on track. And they bought themselves a lot of breathing room that, if they were to drop a dumb game, they most likely will lose another game. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. But yeah, you can't understate the importance of this one in particular. Obviously, the rivalry. And I was thinking, I mean, is the last time the Jets won in Gillette, was that the can't wait game? The playoff game? Is that literally the last time they've won in Gillette?
Yep. When was the last regular season?
2008 with Favre, which I vividly remember.
Right.
That's like one of my favorite games. It's been a long time. And then I think it's 13 straight games lost to the Patriots, and then I think it's 13 straight at Gillette. So kind of it's a crazy streak. And obviously the Patriots have gotten the better of this rivalry in recent years, but make no mistake about it, the Jets are the more talented team. I mean, I think coaching and quarterback and all sorts of other factors can affect it, but the Jets have more talent on their football team than the Patriots do. They'll be going into a hostile environment. It by any means won't be an easy game, but I think this is a game that I expect the Jets to go out there and win. And I think the fact that they beat the Bills so that they can beat anybody, and the Patriots, like, yes, both teams have had a bye, and yes, Zach Wilson struggled against Bill Belichick. What young quarterbacks really haven't? But this is a big moment for Zach Wilson, in my opinion. I don't think he needs to go out there and have, a big 3-touchdown, 300-yard game. I think he just needs to do what he did last week or 2 weeks ago against the Bills and steer the ship. And let's hop into it, Michael. I mean, we don't have a game to look back on, so this pod will be entirely about the Patriots. And I guess the one game we could go back and look on was the one from a few weeks ago where they dropped. And it just felt like in that game, Michael, that they let it slip away. They got off to a hot start. Normally in games where, normally when the Jets lose, it's like you can kind of tell they're going to lose within the first quarter. So, I mean, like, yeah, the Jets have been a fourth quarter team. They've come back, but generally when you get those types of games where you come out and you have a good opening drive or you score a touchdown in the first quarter, or like your young quarterback looks like he's clicking and your defense is making plays, it's like, all right, today's going to be a good day. And it was one of those moments. And Michael Carter II gets that pick six, and then it gets called back. And then you could just feel the air sucked out of that stadium in MetLife. And the Jets, I want to say the Jets never really recovered, but really the defense held up in a ton of tough spots in that second half. It was really Zach Wilson being careless with the football. And we talked about it a lot at the time. The interceptions he was throwing, and even LaFleur said this in his press conference. It's one thing when you're being aggressive and you're trying to fit the ball into a window and it gets picked. That's the NFL, but you can't be careless with the football. And that's what we saw in Zach Wilson's 3 interception game with, interception on intentional throwaway and one where he just kind of threw it up for grabs because they were down 2 possessions at that point, and then one where he just kind of sailed it with some lazy mechanics. But you take those 3 interceptions away, which obviously you can't do, and the Jets win that game. So with that being said, Michael, obviously we're going to look ahead to this week's game. But when you look back at that Patriots game, we've had a few weeks to digest. We had another game to kind of see the aftermath of it. What were some of your takeaways, and what do they need to change, and what do they need to maintain when you look ahead to Sunday?
Well, I think it all starts with Zach Wilson, like you said. And that's not to say the loss was 100% on him, because we will get into some other things that they struggled with in that game and can improve on this time around. But I do think it was the majority on him because, simply put, if you substitute what he did for an average quarterback performance in that game, the Jets win by 2 scores easily, potentially more than that. So, yes, there were other issues, but, with him playing the way he was playing, you needed to be perfect everywhere else to win the game because the defense was great. And obviously the special teams was not. We'll get to that. And there were other issues on offense, but they needed to be very, very sharp everywhere else to win with those 3 interceptions. So you just can't have that this time around. Quite obviously, that's not a groundbreaking revelation there. But I think in addition to taking care of the ball, I think there are still some other ways he could improve upon from that game. And number one, I'm looking at getting the ball out quickly. And that's what he did so well against Buffalo. And that's what's promising going forward is because he looked at this Patriots game clearly. You could see it in his play on the field in the Buffalo game that he looked back at the Patriots, nightmare and just learned from that game really well and kind of applied all the things he struggled with and made the improvements that he needed to make. And that starts with the quick trigger out of the pocket. In the Patriots game was holding the ball too long, couldn't get the ball out on his first read. He was scrambling too much. He was missing open receivers. But the Bills game, they change up the game plan. He changes up his mindset. And now he's getting the ball out in 2.3 seconds, 2.4 seconds, just quick release, not letting the pass rush get home, throwing the ball with confidence. And the Jets had a lot of success that way. So it's not to say that every single game you're going to just, get the ball out immediately and throw a bunch of dump offs and screens and quick hitch routes and stuff like that. There will definitely be moments where you should improvise or you should take a shot down the field. But I do think that's what the bread and butter should be. That's what the basis of this passing game and Zach Wilson's mindset should be is hit your back foot. Once your back foot hits the ground on your drop back, ball out. That should be the main thing because the Jets are doing a good job of getting guys open on that first read, on these quick hitting routes, whether it's Garrett Wilson on a slant, Tyler Conklin on a hitch. The screen game is something they've done really well. Uzama's getting involved now. Those options have been there, those quick throws. And in those games where Zach was struggling, especially the Patriots game, he wasn't taking them often enough. And that's when all the problems started coming. It was a domino effect of him not hitting that quick throw. And that's when, he starts scrambling and then he throws the interceptions and has all those crazy circus plays is not necessarily because of all that or because that was forced. It's more so because he wasn't taking the quick throw when it was there. But in the Bills game, he comes out and just completely erases that issue. It was really promising to see just the entire Bills game because regardless of, he didn't have the most amazing stats of all time and the most amazing highlights, but just the way he responded to that Patriots game, you could not have done it any better because every single problem we were talking about after that game, and that I'm talking about right now, he came out in that Bills game and addressed all of it. So it was really promising, and he needs to build on that. I think the way he played in that game is, like I said, the bread and butter of what he should be for the rest of this season, and especially in this game against a Patriots team that more so than ever really relies on those mistakes by the opponent because, let's be honest, it's not as talented of a Patriots team as we're used to seeing. Even compared to last year's team, I don't think they're overall as talented and dominant on either side of the ball as they were at times last season. But they're still a team that will force mistakes and capitalize on them. So as long as you don't make those mistakes, you should be able to out execute them throughout the course of the game and be able to capitalize on that on the scoreboard. Last game, I think the Jets were out executing them for the most part, but it didn't translate to the scoreboard because you turn the ball over 3 times, you don't score in the red zone, you miss field goals, shank punts, all these things didn't translate in the scoreboard, but it did feel like the Jets, for the most part, on a down-to-down basis, were better than them. And I think it can all start at the quarterback position to be able to capitalize on that. So Bills game Zach is the Zach that I want to see for the majority of the second half of the season. And like I said, this team is the perfect team to utilize that strategy against.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing I would say, and I think that the growth that you saw from Zach in that Bills game was very real and very legitimate. And you're definitely hoping to see him apply some of that same stuff that you saw this week. However, Michael, the Bills and Patriots play two completely different styles of defenses. And this is something that we talked about a lot where, Zach Wilson facing a lot of teams who run two high looks with two safeties, leaving more options underneath for quarterbacks. That's what Zach Wilson faced against the Bills. And that's why I think some of that quick passing game was open. And Zach has had a lot of success against two high teams because he's able to take a lot of those quick passing options. And that's not to say that the Bills didn't come down and try to play man or play single high or to really try to take away some of that underneath stuff from Zach, because they did. But the Patriots and Bills play two completely different styles of defenses, and it's really on Zach to show that he can beat teams when they say, you know what, we're going to take away your first options. We're going to take away the underneath stuff, and you're going to have to beat us with your arm over the top. And I think that's maybe why you saw in the first half of that Patriots game, that was clearly their game plan, because they knew Bill Belichick was going to say, look, stop the run, play underneath, and make this kid beat him with his arm. And Zach came out in that first half and was slinging it. He was decisive. He was throwing downfield, and they had a lot of success. But then he got a little careless with the football. He wasn't as confident, and he panicked. You certainly saw 2 panic interceptions in the second half, and that all sets the stage for this game. I think the one thing that you could really take away from the Bills' performance is, even if the Patriots do what they're going to do, which is play a lot of single high, play a lot of man defense, take away that underneath stuff, it's will Zach stay in the pocket? That's not to say that he can't use his natural athleticism. Obviously, the Patriots have one of the best pass rushers in all of football, and he's going to have to evade Matt Judon at times. But are we going to be watching the circus act at times of Zach Wilson running around 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage and making guys miss and trying to throw it into double coverage? Or we're going to see the Zach Wilson that we saw against the Bills, who was stepping up into the pressure, stepping up into the pocket, and making plays with his arm. So I think it'll look different, and I think he's going to have to throw downfield a little bit more than you saw in that Bills game. But it's really the composure that I think I want to see from Zach. What do you think about that? The differences in the styles of defenses that he faced against Buffalo and that he'll face on Sunday?
No, I completely agree with you. I think it's definitely going to be a different type of game plan in terms of the exact routes and throws that they try to win with. And I think there will be plenty of plays where he's going to have to hold the ball a little bit longer to let things develop as they try to attack downfield and beat some of these man-to-man matchups that they'll face. So like you said, it's going to be a different game plan in the sense that I don't think they're going to be able to get it out as quick and as simply as I think they did throughout the Bills game. But it's really just the mentality of the Bills game that you want to carry over, regardless of what the game plan is. Every single game, there's nothing stopping you from stepping up in the pocket, being confident, taking care of the football, playing with good rhythm, doing all those things he did in the Bills game is applicable to any situation, regardless of the opponent or game plan. So I think that's the biggest thing to take away from the Bills game. Not necessarily to say that every single game this year he's going to average, whatever it was that game, 2.2 seconds to release the ball, which was insanely fast that week. So it's not going to be that same exact game plan every week. And you don't necessarily want it to be, because the Jets have explosive weapons and Zach Wilson has a big arm, and you want to take advantage of those things. So it's not going to be that same way every single week, but I do think the mentality and just the mindset that he played with, that's what you want to see him carry over each week throughout the season. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think this Patriots team is, one of the most single high heavy teams in the league, one of the most man coverage heavy teams in the league. And, you're going to have to take some of those shots downfield if you want to beat them. And, at times during that Patriots game, Zach was doing a really good job of that. First half, the Garrett Wilson bomb, which was, it was improvised, that play, because he ran outside the pocket, but the route itself was as designed. I think it was an out and up that Garrett Wilson ran. That was within structure. Obviously, Wilson got outside the pocket to buy the time, but that was a designed route. He had a couple seam routes to Conklin and Uzama in this game that were nice. So they did have a lot of examples in that game of getting people open, creating separation. I think both LaFleur and the weapons themselves did a good job of getting open in this game and creating options. And, Wilson capitalized on them sometimes, but there were also some opportunities he missed on because he wasn't as confident in the pocket with just staying poised and stepping up like he was in the Bills game. So I think he can translate what he did against Buffalo in a different fashion because he's, like we said, he's going to have to be a little more patient this week, potentially taking some more aggressive throws downfield. And he's probably going to have to face more pressure this week against a Patriots team that did create a lot of pressure on the edge in that first game. That's definitely something that the offensive line is going to have to improve on. Dwayne Brown and Cedric Ogbuehi, they bounced back against the Bills, but in that Patriots game, there was plenty of edge pressure. So that's something they can improve on. But yeah, I think that the main thing is you want to see that mentality carried over from the Bills game throughout the second half of the season.
Now, do we know yet if Max Mitchell will be playing on Sunday? I saw he hasn't been activated yet at the time we're recording this.
Doesn't look like it.
But I think they have until tomorrow. I think they have until Saturday to do it. So we'll see about that. I mean, either way, whether it's Ogbuehi or Mitchell, they'll certainly have their hands full with Matt Judon. I would hope that the Jets are, or I would imagine the Jets are going to have a strong 12 personnel look. I know you were talking a lot about running out of 11 personnel, and we'll get into that in a second. But I think the one thing that 12 personnel offense does give you is you can leave those tight ends into block and help those edge rushers or chip a guy like Matt Judon just to buy Zach an extra split second or so. Because he really did wreck the game a little bit for Zach. And for Zach, everybody sees the statistics about under pressure versus clean pocket. But we talked about it a lot where that stat is a little misleading because a lot of the pressure stats that are driving that number down are pressures that he's created. And then some of the clean pocket looks are times where maybe a guy did get beat, but he steps up into the pocket. So it maintains its integrity. And so then therefore it's, not a throw where he's under pressure. I think it's, and we've talked about this where I feel that Zach will be a good improviser, or at least has the athletic ability to become a good improviser. It's just letting that supplement his game and not be the base of it. So if Zach is in those situations, like it's an elite trait for him to make a guy like Matthew Judon miss and look silly and break his ankles. But he has to be more willing to throw the ball away in this game. One of these days he'll hit one of those, and then maybe you keep trying to grow on it. But if you break the pocket and you make a guy miss and nothing's there immediately, he's got to either do one of two things: throw it away or run. And this is something we talked a lot about. The Pats have struggled against mobile quarterbacks. We saw Zach run a little bit more against the Bills. Do you expect him to be running a little bit? Now he's had the bye week to rest the ankle. Maybe his ankle is a little more healed and maybe he can be a little bit more mobile. Do you expect the Jets to maybe drop some read options or some PA boots and telling Zach to get after it on the ground? Or do you think they try to protect him a little bit?
I don't know if you tell me if you think otherwise, and they should implement it, but I don't know if they'll do a ton of the option game. I mean, we have seen them do that around the red zone, especially last season. I think they did a little bit more of it. So maybe around the red zone, but again, just to go back to the Bills game, like you mentioned, I think, there were a couple of situations in that game where he was willing to tuck the ball and run for a first down on third down. And that's something he didn't do against the Patriots in some big spots, especially that 1 4th down play in the fourth quarter. That play got a lot of attention. So to see him, that's just one of the many things he corrected in that Bills game. That was a direct response to the issues from the previous game. So it was promising to see that. And I think that's the kind of rusher I want to see him be. He doesn't need a ton of designed runs, but he's still a guy who, if there's a lane there, or if the defense is in man coverage and they've got your backs turned to you, go ahead and take that thing yourself. He does have the speed and a little bit of elusiveness to his game in the open field to make enough guys miss, to have the speed to get there quickly enough to pick up some of those first downs. And he just has a feel for like creating angles, getting out of the pocket a little bit. Like if you watch his touchdown against the Dolphins where he ran, he does a good job of kind of manipulating the defensive lineman to create the angle, create the lane out of the pocket. Like when he had that run against Miami, he sort of stepped up and he faked a little bit to his left, like he's going to go through that gap. and it just made the nose tackle shift that way a little bit, and then he came back to the right, and the A gap was open. He ran through that, and he scored. So he does a good job with that too, like the manipulation of the defensive line. So that really helps the scrambling game. So I think he can be a very good scrambling quarterback. Like, look at Daniel Jones with the Giants. I mean, different type of athletes, but he's a really dangerous scrambler because he's just has a good feel for knowing when it's the right time to do it. And he supplements it with really good, really solid speed for a quarterback, which maybe Zach Wilson's not quite as fast as he is, but I think he's still probably in the above average tier. I don't know. Jones is pretty fast.
What are the 40 times?
I'd have to look it up. But I don't know.
Maybe
I think
maybe it's just
above average.
Maybe it's just because Daniel Jones looks like a nerd and he wears the long sleeves, but it's hard for me to admit that he would be faster than Zach. I mean, Zach's definitely the better athlete, but in terms of pure straight line speed, maybe Daniel Jones has him. I know what you mean, though. The point is absolutely correct, where it's like, all right, Zach Wilson's not Lamar Jackson, but he's certainly a plus athlete.
Yeah.
And you can even call him an elite athlete, and the way you see him make guys miss behind the line of scrimmage and some of the stuff he does. The one thing I will say is he has to learn how to protect himself a little bit better, because it's not even just the Philly preseason game where we all did the ACL scare. He does seem to take not even just big hits, but it's even when he slides or he gets tackled awkwardly. He had even his first game back against Pittsburgh where he scrambled out of the pocket and threw it away, and he spun around and his leg bent all backwards and he was fine. Like, there's sometimes where Zach Wilson doesn't protect himself, I think, as well as he could. But I think you have to use his athleticism, especially down the stretch. I'd like to see him run a lot more. Just finding that line of how to protect yourself and how to be aggressive. Zach Wilson aside, though, unless you wanted to, did you pull up their 40 times at all?
I don't think Zach did a 40, right?
Yeah, I don't think he did, but what was
Daniel Jones? I couldn't find one for him.
Did Daniel Jones run?
Let's pull up the Daniel Jones. I'm pretty sure he did one. He's also kind of, because he's taller, he's sort of a longer strider, so maybe it makes him look fast. Oh wow, his 40 wasn't actually that good. 4.81.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. He looks kind of fast.
That's about what I expected.
They have it at 51st percentile for quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think Zach's faster. I think you're
Josh Allen
off
was
on that one, but
4.75.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe Zach would be like
6'6".
somewhere around there. So 4.7, 4.75.
Yeah. Regardless, like to see him run a little bit more. In terms of there was some injury news, I guess, this week in terms of Corey Davis won't be back. The resurgence of Denzel Mims softens that blow, and it seems like we'll see if he can build on that big third down connection he had with Zach at the end of that Bills game. Some of the other news too. Elijah Moore officially now the slot receiver for the Jets. I mean, we kind of got that after watching the Bills game, but now he's had a bye week to really prepare for that role. We talked about it in the mailbag earlier this week, but how involved do you expect Moore to be in the offense, especially this week?
I think this is a good opportunity to finally get him going. I mean, like we discussed last time, it's kind of been a gradual increase with his role, just kind of getting him acclimated into playing the slot, because he has been a primary outside receiver for his entire Jets career up until the past few weeks. So, he misses the one game, he plays 10% or somewhere around that in the next game. Then he's up into the 40% range in this past game. So now you get a whole bye week. And I think now you can come out of it, especially with Corey Davis not playing. And he should have a really good opportunity to take another step into a starting role this week and finally start to get back involved in the offense. And specifically, I think they have a chance to get him going in the run game this week. Obviously, he scored a touchdown actually in this stadium last season. So that could actually hurt them a little bit, because maybe Belichick will be more alert because that happened. But either way, the Patriots have struggled with wide receiver runs this season. They've given up the sixth most rushing yards to wide receivers. And on a per carry basis, they're the fourth worst in terms of rushing to receivers. So teams have had a lot of success against them with that. So I think the Jets could explore getting him involved that way, especially because they put so many plays on film recently where he hasn't gotten the ball. So I feel like the opposing defense will watch that and they won't really respect the threat that much. So the Jets have kind of set themselves up well to maybe catch them off guard this week and finally, give him the football when he runs one of those motions in the backfield. So I think that this is an opportunity to finally get him involved. And after having a few weeks to acclimate into the position a little bit, he should have a good chance. He should be comfortable this week to handle a bigger role with more targets. So we'll see if it finally happens, because he is a very talented player. And, there was stuff that happened off the field that you and I weren't a fan of. I know probably the team didn't appreciate much. And, it's unfortunate all that happened. But at this point, you're trying to make a playoff push. You decide to keep him around. He's out there. He's playing snaps. Get him the football. Let's win some games.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't read too much into it, but it did seem like, listening to his interview, that he seems like he's in a better headspace, got to go home for the bye, spend some time with his family. And, I think winning helps even when you're frustrated with your own role. Elijah knows that he has an opportunity to contribute to something special here. And all it takes is one injury for him to really have to become the focal point of this offense. And even without injuries, I still think they can find ways for him to get truly involved. We've been talking about it for a long time, how Elijah Moore should be in the slot and Garrett Wilson should be at the X. And I think you're going to find out why the second half of the season. I mean, you certainly saw from Garrett in that Bills game, but I feel like a lot of Elijah's traits really are meant for the slot. It doesn't mean he can't maybe develop into an outside guy like an Antonio Brown or something like that. But obviously Elijah has the natural short area quickness, and his fluidity as a router should really help him. I think the other thing about this game is Bill Belichick, what he's going to try to do, and he's going to try to take away Zach's favorite weapon. Obviously, he's going to play the run first, but we've seen it time and time again. He takes away your favorite target, and absolutely he's going to try to take away Garrett Wilson, especially after the type of game that he had against New England a few weeks ago. I wouldn't expect a big one from Garrett. I mean, I think there may be some early targets, try to get him involved, and he might make a few big plays, but Bill Belichick's going to try to take him away. And I think that's a real opportunity for Elijah Moore to step up, or Denzel Mims, but more in particular, because when you try to take away the short stuff and the stuff to the flats, I think what really does open up is kind of those deep crossing routes or some levels concepts at the sidelines, but specifically those deep crossing routes over the middle. Elijah's the type of guy that can run that from the slot and get open. When your corner's having to play the flats, or you're having linebackers having to crash down, or safeties coming down, it does feel like those crossing routes, those 15, 20 yard crossing routes can exploit some of that man coverage that Bill is going to try to play. And I think, like, you're right. I think this is maybe the Elijah Moore breakout game coming. We'll see. You did talk about them running out of 11 personnel. I saw a tweet from that. You want to explain that? Because, we saw from Conklin's big game against the Patriots that the tight ends also can have a big impact against this Patriots defense. So I was thinking maybe, a 12 personnel look and trying to run the football and then passing to the tight ends might be the way to go. But you think differently?
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at some of the breakdowns in terms of how the Patriots defense does against different personnel packages and stuff. And what stood out the most is that their run defense is much worse when the opponent runs out of 11 personnel than with 12 personnel. And, just to explain it, 11 personnel is one running back, one tight end, three receivers. 12 personnel is one running back, two tight ends, and two receivers. So it's against those three receiver sets where the Patriots have had their biggest problems against the run. And the run defense is the weakness of that Patriots defense. They have a elite pass defense. I think they're second ranked in DVOA, and their run defense is 19th. So you can get them on the ground, and the Jets didn't do it last time. And I think a way they could turn that around this time in this game is to use more 11 personnel, because it just seems like that they don't handle it as well, the Patriots defense, when 11 personnel is out there and they have to play nickel, and it seems like those packages aren't surviving as well against the run as the 12 personnel. When teams play 12 personnel, then the Patriots can play their base more often. It seems like they are holding up better against the run in those situations. And obviously, you expect to be better against the run when you have your personnel out there, but I'm just saying, even compared to league average, the 11 personnel run defense for the Patriots significantly worse than versus 12 personnel. So I think the Jets should lean into that. And what's interesting is, in that Patriots game, they didn't do that a lot. I think it was 7 out of their 17 carries, they had 11 personnel. And that's basically on par with the league average in terms of how often teams do that. But the next week against the Bills, they did start doing that a lot. They did start relying on 11 personnel for the run game. They did it for 22 of their 33 carries. So that's 2/3, about 67%. The league average is about, I think, 47. So they did it a lot in that Bills game. And that's where they had all their success running the ball. I think they were over 6 yards per carry in that game. Michael Carter's rush touchdown was on that, was out of 11 personnel. Two of his big runs on that final drive of the game were out of 11 personnel. So I know the Jets have two good tight ends, and they've both been playing solid football. Uzama's picking it up. Conklin's doing what he's doing in the passing game, and he's been blocking well also. But it seems like the Jets are having more success running the ball out of 11 personnel. So it's not just a Patriots weakness. I also think the Jets do better with it, and the numbers back that up. They rank much higher as an 11 personnel rushing team than 12. So I think that's the strategy for this game. And I know, like you said, there are also benefits for 12 personnel. Maybe they could lean towards that for the passing game, so they could, get the extra pass protection in there. And you still mix it up. I'm not saying you do one or the other. It's just about what you lean towards. But I think going with a heavy 11 personnel run game like they did last week, like I said, it was 2/3 their rushing attempts against the Bills. I think that's the plan because that's the Patriots' weakness. Seems like the Jets do better with it. And I think they're able to do well with it because most of the season it's been Corey Davis, but the wide receiver blocking has been solid because of Corey Davis. And now Denzel Mims has come in and pick up the slack for him. Go look at some of the blocks Mims made on that final drive of the Bills game. I think that allows them to, have three receivers out there, spread the defense out a little bit more, but still be able to block pretty well because you have a guy like Corey Davis and now Denzel Mims. So I think that's a strategy. And then you could work some of those wide receiver runs off that, the motion threat, spread the defense out, gives you some more room to work on the outside. So I think 11 personnel is the way to go in this game. And once again, that's not to say they never use two tight ends, but just in terms of what you should lean towards, I think more three receiver sets could be the way to go in this one.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, like you said, that jet motion stuff and getting Elijah Moore involved in the run game could be beneficial. We talked about that on Monday, where it's like, let's find other ways to use Elijah Moore. Obviously, he's a receiving threat, and Braxton Berrios is great in those situations, but I'd like to see Elijah Moore lined up in the backfield every once in a while, like a Deebo Samuel. I'd like to see Elijah Moore get those end arounds and try to be creative with them, those wide receiver screens. How do you think they'll manage that ratio between slot reps for Braxton and Elijah Moore? Because if you were going to go back last year, you would have said Braxton Berrios is the backup, Elijah Moore is the clear starter. But it does seem like every time Berrios is on the field, he makes plays, whereas Elijah Moore has kind of disappeared. And Berrios also has that natural chemistry with Zach Wilson, whereas Elijah Moore and Zach seem to be trying to develop it. But at the end of the day, Elijah Moore, you've invested more in and seemingly should be the better receiver. How do you think they'll manage Berrios and Berrios's reps now that Elijah Moore is the official slot receiver?
I mean, I think Moore is going to get a bigger slice of the pie this week. You look at the last game against the Bills, Wilson was on the field for most of the game, 92%. Mims played a lot, 83%. Then the other wide receivers were, or at least Moore and Berrios I'm talking about, they were pretty close. Moore, 45%, Berrios, 35%. So in this game, I think we could see Moore bumped up closer to Wilson and Mims, maybe into the 60s, and then that cuts from Berrios a little bit, and they could also cut from the tight ends a little bit. Because like I said, I think maybe three receivers is more so the way to go in this game. So you look at the last game, Conklin 72%, Uzama 53%. So maybe take from them a little bit to get more some playing time. So Berrios can also be out there. So I think that's what we'll see. Maybe a small slice for Berrios into to feed into Moore, and then take a little bit from maybe the tight ends a little bit also. But Berrios is still going to be a fixture. I think that's going to be the case every single week because in his niche role he always provides value with what he can do. But I think Moore is, like we said, I think Moore is going to start settling in as he's going to be utilized more frequently, just as an option out of the slot, just getting targets on slants in the flat, hitch routes, just all that quick stuff out of the slot. I think we'll see him get 5 to 6 targets in this game. That's where I would pin it at. I really think that we're going to start to see him finally be a cog in the offense.
Yeah, like what we all expected him to be. I mean, the talk about Elijah Moore every practice is how he's, future all pro. The Jets have a superstar at wide receiver. I mean, you remember those articles every year, going back to his rookie year, and then even this training camp, people were, or the beat writers are talking about how great Elijah Moore is and how fluid of a route
I mean,
runner
I
is.
thought
And
he was going to be the best player on the team this year. So
yeah,
I was definitely a part of that.
like, while you can't read too much into all that stuff because, we're talking about practice, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but you don't, I feel like you wouldn't say that stuff unless you saw it. And like, you can see it on film clearly from his rookie year. I just really I do wonder what the story really is with Elijah Moore. I think you're right. I think he'll really start to become what we think he can be now that he's in the slot. But at the end of the year, maybe we look back. I mean, he had all that muscle in the offseason. Maybe that slowed him down. Who knows? Who really knows what the main issue is with him? I just think it's mainly the quarterback. Hasn't had to throw as much when he was getting frustrated, and maybe their chemistry was off a little bit. But now that he's here, they've had the bye. I am optimistic, like you said, that Elijah can become a big part of this offense, because if they're going to make any sort of playoff push, they have to have other weapons outside of Garrett Wilson, making a big impact.
And
All right,
this
we talked
game's
a
going
lot
to tell
about
us a lot. Quickly, I guess,
yeah.
for
Go ahead.
we move on, but I think this one will tell us a lot about what's going on with Elijah Moore, because again, like you lay out the past few weeks, there's a little bit of, a step-by-step path there that would lead you to believe that this is going to be the game where he finally gets more involved in the offense. But if that doesn't happen in this game, he continues to hover around, below 50% of the snaps, doesn't get targeted, just feels like he's out there doing cardio. If that happens again, then I think we're in an odd spot, specifically because Davis isn't playing. I think that, leaves a lot of room open for more targets to be had. Although obviously Mims is taking Davis's role specifically, but if it doesn't happen in this game, then we're kind of in a weird spot in terms of when's it going to happen? Is it going to happen? But I feel pretty good that this is going to be the week that it comes together for him, just in terms of being involved relatively frequently.
All right, we spent a lot of time talking about the offense. Let's talk about the defense. And despite the Jets' offensive woes in the second half of that Patriots game, the defense, I felt, for the most part, played a complete game. I mean, they had that bad drive at the start of the second half, but if you remember, their only touchdown should have been called back from offensive pass interference. I guess that's another thing to think about this game. Yes, the Jets on the road, but hopefully we can get some better officiating this time around. But defensively, Michael, the front four was feasting. The Patriots will get Andrews back at center, so that might make their matchup a little bit more difficult. But a week of rest for this defensive line, who at the time of the bye, I think you obviously that Bills game was their best year of the season, shutting down one of the best offenses. So what are your thoughts on the match of the Jets defense versus the Patriots offense? Clearly, Pat's offense not what it used to be, but still, it's still the Patriots. They have a great running game, and Mac Jones has proven that he can maybe manage the game a little bit better than Zach Wilson thus far. Certainly makes a little bit more mistakes, but he certainly isn't flawless. Let's just put it that way. And you saw it in that pick six that got called back, and he had the other interception that got caught by Michael Carter II. I mean, he is a game manager, but he's still vulnerable to some of those turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Mac Jones in that game, he should have had more turnovers than Zach did. I mean, there's one interception he did legitimately throw. There's the pick six that got called back. There was a throw later that he threw right to CJ Mosley that should have been an easy interception, but he dropped it. And then there was a fumble that the Patriots ended up recovering. So he easily could have had 4 turnovers in that game. He is not playing well this year. And you just look at this Patriots offense as a whole, and I have high expectations for the Jets defense in this game. They should be able to handily destroy the Patriots offense. I mean, you look at the last 3 games, they put up 203 yards last week at home against the Colts team that has not been that great this year. 288 against the Jets, 260 at home against the Bears, who have a terrible defense. So this Patriots offense is not good. And the Jets really should be able to control this game defensively, as they have been in the majority of their games recently. And even in this game against the Patriots, like you mentioned, it was a good defensive performance, and they just got put in bad positions by the offense, by the special teams. Outside of that drive to start the second half, I mean, that was the only legitimate touchdown that they allowed, in which field position wasn't a part of it. And for the game, if you take out 3 field goals in which the drive already started in field goal range, they only gave up 13 points. And, they had the one interception. They were very close to that second one. So they continuously dug the Jets out of holes that were created by Wilson's turnovers, by the special teams. So they were very good in that last game. The Patriots offense in that game actually averaged only 3.8 yards per play. That's the fewest the Jets have allowed in any game this year. So they're ultimately just as good in that game as they have been in many of their victories this year. So I have high expectations for them once again, and we'll see how the Patriots adjust. You know that they're going to come out with a different game plan than they did 2 weeks ago, but this is a mismatch for the Jets defense, and they should be able to keep this within reach for the Jets offense. The main thing I think they can improve from the last game is just the tackling, because they did have some big runs, specifically Ramondre Stevenson. He had a very good game. He was breaking tackles, and it was mainly the safeties. I think Whitehead and Joyner missed some tackles on him that led to big gains. But other than that, the Jets they stopped the run decently at the end of the day. It's just a couple of big Stevenson runs that ended up giving the Patriots a few points. But it was just the tackling. For the most part, they clogged the gaps pretty well. Just need to finish a little better on him. But yeah, looking at the Jets defense against the Patriots offense, the expectation should be that they have another, signature game like they've been having for the past 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Patriots, and I guess maybe how defenses will try to attack, or offenses will try to attack the Jets defense, because of their elite cornerback play, especially with the lack of Patriots talent at receiver. I think you're going to see them really try to focus on the tight ends and the running backs in the passing game. Obviously, they're going to try to run the football, but I think they're really going to try to put a lot of stress on the Jets linebackers and safeties and zone coverage, and try to target tight ends and running backs. I mean, how do you feel like the Jets have done so far this year in terms of matching up in the passing game against tight ends and running backs?
I mean, they've done well for the most part. It hasn't been as much of an issue as it was last year, and especially because exactly what you just said, because of how good the Jets are at corner, you'd think teams would, directly attack those other positions to try to avoid Sauce Gardner, avoid DJ Reed, avoid Michael Carter II. But it hasn't transpired too well. They've tackled well when challenged. I mean, specifically Quan Alexander and CJ Mosley, and Quincy Williams. He's had some good stops too, but he's also missed some tackles. But he's been solid, I would say, for the most part. So they've responded well, and it just hasn't been targeted as often as you would think, which is, I think, a testament to just the communication and overall coverage of the defense as a unit to be able to deny some of those targets in the flat that last year the Jets were giving up, easily. I mean, you think to the Panthers game to open the season, the first Patriots game they played, it just felt like guys were getting passes in the flat and nobody was near them. Not even designed screens. Like, it would just be dump offs, and they would easily gain so much yardage. But this year, that's not happening as often. So, in the first Patriots game, Stevenson did have, that was probably their biggest running back performance they allowed. He had 7 catches for 72 yards. So, although a lot of that came on probably a couple of those catches, but yeah, that's something they can improve on from the last game. So we'll see if the Patriots try to go back to that, or if they open it up downfield a little bit more, challenge the Jets. But the Jets have shown you that's something you don't really want to do against them. So I don't know. This is a very advantageous matchup for the Jets defense. It's, other than Andrews being back, which is a nice boost compared to the last game, it's just hard to see where the Jets are at a disadvantage here. And that's not a disadvantage. I'm just saying it's an upgrade for them, but the Jets have the edge here, and they should be able to hold the Pats under 20 points and leave this game in the hands of the offense, just whether or not they could take care of the ball and at least have a respectable offensive performance.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how much man coverage the Jets end up playing in this one, because they play a lot of either cover one man or they play quarters coverage. And it feels like they play quarters coverage more than any other team in the league, which is, basically 4 guys playing deep, your 2 outside corners and your 2 safeties playing over the top. But against this Patriots offense, it feels like they're going to try to dink and dunk you down the field, beat you by 1,000 paper cuts and running the football. And so that makes me believe that they're going to really try to, stop the run, play underneath. And that might mean more man coverage, more of those cover 1 looks. I guess the counter to that is maybe then you're lining up some of your linebackers or maybe your safeties in man coverage with those tight ends. What do you think? I mean, what do you think their plan is in terms of dealing with those tight ends if they go to man coverage, or at least this season? I mean, they have Will Parks that they've used at times this season as that third linebacker to get more pass coverage and speed on the field. But with Quincy healthy, with Quan healthy, I mean, what do you think? Because that's the only thing that I can see the Jets being hurt by is the tight end. It seems like certainly last year the Patriots tight ends had a field day against the Jets. This past year, not really. I mean, the Jets tight ends had better success, but looking at this matchup, that does seem like the one part where the Patriots could maybe try to get something going. I don't know. I mean, I know you said that it hasn't really worked too well for offenses, but how do you see the Jets kind of dealing with that in terms of the coverages that they might try to play against Mac Jones and these tight ends?
Well, I'm interested to see how they kind of respond to what they did last week, because they changed up the way they used the cornerbacks against Buffalo. And now I wouldn't expect them to maintain this. I think it was more so their response to the Bills. But DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner were switching sides last week for the first time all season. For every single game up until last week, it was Gardner on the left, Reed on the right. They never moved, regardless of who they were playing. But in this Bills game, they were rotating. And when I was watching the film, trying to pick up the tendencies to see why they were doing it, when they were doing it, I think what they were mainly doing was Gardner would be on the strong side, on the tight end side, and Reed would be on the opposite side. So Sauce has really been their matchup guy for tight ends this year, which is just another feather in his cap, just the many things he's capable of. So I would expect to see some of that. But, like you said, the last game, the Patriots didn't really attack it that much. I mean, Hunter Henry only got 1 target. Jonnu Smith had 4. So that's only 5 out of the 35
by the way,
passes.
They're completely wasting Jonnu Smith. Can we just be honest about it? He was one of our favorite free agent targets. And apparently the Jets were really in on him before the Patriots overpaid for him. But it seems like, I mean, if you go back 2 years ago, he was option number 3 in Tennessee, or even at times option number 2. I mean, Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, and then it felt like Jonnu Smith. And they were so creative in the way that they used him and his athleticism, putting him in the backfield and pitching to him and giving him tight end screens and really maximizing his ability to make yards after catch. And it just seems like he's completely disappeared in New England. And they give a lot of these, Hunter Henry's a great tight end, but feels like Jonnu Smith is a great playmaker, and the Patriots are starving for playmakers.
No, yeah. I mean, and they're not even really using Henry this year. I mean, he is 19 catches, 240 yards. Jonnu is 16, 154. And they're paying both these guys a lot more than the Jets are paying their tight ends. I think they're both in the 8-figure range. So they're not doing a great job maximizing those guys in the passing game, at least. So yeah, I mean, overall, we should have high expectations for the Jets defense in this one. To me, it would be disappointing if the Patriots got to 20 points. That's how I see it.
I mean, yes, it does depend on field position, or if Zach Wilson throws an interception on his own 20, but I agree. I mean, I think the Patriots' only success is to really get that ground game going. And the Jets have made so much improvement in their run defense from this year to last year. And, Ramondre Stevenson's a hell of a player. They have Harris back at this point, right?
I believe so. Not 100% sure on that.
Let me make sure on that.
We'll have to double check it.
But I think that's their only chance of success in this game is to try to run the football. But with the way that CJ Mosley and Belichick has been so complimentary of Mosley, just the type of player that he is and how smart he is, and how at times it felt like he knew the play as soon as the huddle broke for the Patriots. Having him in this game is huge. And it's really huge in terms of the Jets defending that Patriots ground attack. So like you said, I think this is a match that the Jets expect to win and that they should win. It's really going to come down to, can the offense, stay ahead of the sticks, and can Zach Wilson not turn the ball over? And I think that Zach has shown that. I mean, Zach has maybe developed the reputation as turnover prone quarterback, but half of his career interceptions have come against the Patriots. He's had many games. In fact, he had a long streak before that Patriots game of not throwing an interception. So he's more than capable of taking care of the football. It's just finding that line of, okay, Zach is going to try to be aggressive now and throw downfield. How can he not be careless with the football? But if the Jets play like they did against the Bills, or at least try to, or like how they played against the Broncos, the Packers, or the Dolphins is probably the best example in terms of a run first approach. Don't put a lot of weight on his shoulders and take care of the football. Zach has shown he can do that. Bill is going to try to take it away, and he's going to have to beat him with his arm, but it has to be smart decisions. He doesn't have to throw for 300 yards in this game for it to be a success. I guess, what were some of the key matchups when you looked at this game? We could start on the Jets offensive side of the football. We talked a lot about Elijah Moore and the slot and running out of 11 personnel. I mean, on the offensive line, I mean, obviously Judon is such an animal, and he's either going up against Ogbuehi, who's hold up all right, but he's certainly not I guess he's a starting tackle at this point. I mean, based off 2 games, but wasn't viewed that way prior to that Bills game, or a guy in Max Mitchell, who also was viewed as more of a developmental project guy. So either way, either you're going to have a guy in Ogbuehi, who wasn't even on the team to start the year, or you're going to have a guy in Max Mitchell who wasn't expected to really play. And even by putting him in this week, maybe are you messing up some of the chemistry that Ogbuehi and Herbig had in their run game last week? I mean, who knows? So yeah, what are some of your thoughts on the matchups this week?
Well, I look first to the O-line for sure. Like you just said with Judon, I mean, he was a game wrecker last time, and it just constant pressure. It would help the Jets a lot to keep the pocket clean because we know the splits at this point with the pressure and the clean pocket. And like we said many times, it's definitely very much so on Zach Wilson to determine what's clean, what's pressured. That's largely on him. But at the same time, regardless of what team you are, more clean pockets is always good. And against the Patriots, they didn't have. I mean, for the most part, it was okay, but it definitely. I think we talked about this after the Patriots game. It was the edge pressure that's the big problem. The interior protection that was fine, but off the edge they got a lot of pressure, and that's where the problems came for Wilson because he wasn't willing to step up in that game, and he was running out towards the pressure, and he wasn't getting much out of that. Obviously, we saw so. The Bills game, though, he was more willing to step up. So, if as long as the interior can stay clean again, then I think if we get that same Wilson who's willing to step up and make throws under the pressure, then he should be able to mitigate that edge pressure better than he did in the first game. So, in addition to Judon off the edge, I think I'm expecting the interior to have another solid game of protection because Christian Barmore, he missed that first game. He's going to miss this one again. So the Patriots interior D-line they really don't have that many weapons on that interior D-line. It's one of the weaker units in the league. So I have high expectations for the interior O-line again. If they can keep if they can keep the up the middle pressure to a minimum, then Zach Wilson has the opportunity to build on what he did against the Bills last week and step up in the pocket and make throws, even if there is pressure coming off the edge. So that's key. Interior protection helps you mitigate edge pressure because they give you that room to step up. And they just need Wilson to be more willing to be able to do that. But still, on the edge, you want to limit the pressure as much as possible. So Judon against those tackles for sure. But another guy who quietly was a big game wrecker in that first Patriots game. Dietrich Wise, number 91. He's a versatile guy for them. Will play both edges. He'll even play on the inside shoulder of the tackle sometimes, but mostly off the edge. And he had a lot of pressures for them too. So Judon and Wise got to hold those guys down on the edge. But once again, either way, if the interior can hold up, Zach Wilson is going to have chances to step up and make throws down the field. So it's going to be on him to handle that pressure as best as possible. So yeah, I'm looking at the trenches first and foremost. How about you? Any offensive matchups you have your eyes on?
I mean, I think I'm trying to. Obviously we've talked a lot about the tight ends in this one, and I think I almost want to throw in a CJ Uzama Matt Judon matchup, not necessarily because he's going to have to be tasked with covering Uzama, but I think that Uzama has shown his ability as a blocker in this offense. And I do think, yes, they're going to have to, they've had a lot of success running out of 11 personnel. I think that they should definitely utilize a lot of that. But passing out of the 12 personnel offense allows a guy like Uzama to stay in and block Judon or even chip him and become a threat in the passing game after he makes a block. So I think Uzama is one of those guys that I'll keep my eye on in this game. I think he's come on each and every week. Conklin's the guy who had the big game last time these two teams played, but I think Uzama might be the guy who might have more of an impact in this
I
one.
like that. I really like that. And actually, I'm glad you brought him up because it reminded me of watching the Patriots film. Uzama really could have had a huge game in that one. And I know he made one big catch, but in addition to that, there were multiple plays where there was a chance for him on the first drive where the Jets kicked a field goal after that Garrett Wilson bomb. There was a play in the flat where Uzama could have at least had a first down, possibly a touchdown if he could break one tackle. But Wilson was hesitant and didn't get him the ball there. And then there's a play later on where he ran a seam route, and the Jets had 3 routes attacking 2 guys, and Uzama was wide open, but Wilson was unable to get to that part of the read before he scrambled. So there were some plays there on film for Uzama. So yeah, I think this maybe could be the Uzama game now that you bring it up, because they're going to key in on Conklin after what he did last game. And CJ Uzama's, looking at the last game, there are opportunities there and could be more this game if Conklin is the focal point for the Patriots. So yeah, I'm looking at him, and especially out of those 12 personnel looks where, hopefully you can establish your run game, get some play action going. Maybe you can get him out in space and continue to utilize his yak ability, which they've done a better job of recently. Could be the Uzama game.
Yeah, because it's like, and I didn't really know who to say to match him up with, because Patriots linebackers don't really scare me. I mean, I guess McCourty or Duggar at safety might be on him at times. But yeah, I mean, I think leaving him in to block Judon, and then, like I said, those chip plays where he can block Judon and then run to the flat really quickly. He can get Zach can eat and get 3-4 yards in every one of those plays, or even tight end screens to Uzama. I just think that, like you said, Conklin and Garrett Wilson are the 2 guys that really went off in that last Patriots game. The Patriots have watched that film, and they're going to try to take away what the Jets did well in offense. And so I think they're going to have to go, obviously those guys are going to be involved, but they have to find other ways to beat the Pats. And yeah, Uzama had plenty of opportunities in that game to really make something happen. And then, yeah, like we said, other guys like Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims could step up. I'm also excited to see more of James Robinson now that he's had another week. We underestimate how hard it would be to get traded midseason, have to learn an entire playbook, and then go play on Sunday. So he knew enough how to, hey, you're going to run through the B gap on this play. It's a counter. All that basic stuff. But in terms of learning the nuances of this playbook, and especially in the passing offense too, we've seen a lot of Ty Johnson on third downs. I think you're going to see a lot more, or a lot less Ty Johnson and maybe some more James Robinson now that he's had time to acclimate to the playbook a little bit more. You could see him in some of those passing situations, not just as a receiver, but mainly as a blocker. Just giving him another week with the Jets, knowing the playbook and getting his feet under him. I think he's also a guy, obviously we know the Jets are going to try to run the ball, but we know what Michael Carter brings in terms of his speed and elusiveness. And I think James Robinson really started to get going on that last drive against the Bills. But before that, he'd had some nice runs, but I want to see more James Robinson, seeing him break more tackles, show off that physicality that I felt the Jets lost when they lost Breece Hall. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick exactly one for this offense because the Patriots are going to try to take away whatever you do well. But I think Uzama's an under the radar guy to keep an eye on. Also, I guess maybe Ruckert. It seems like Eboa is going to be out for this game. So, I mean, I don't know how much Ruckert would play, but if they do plan to go tight end heavy, maybe you'll see Ruckert out there a little bit more. I really hope I can't tell. Do you want to see Ruckert down the stretch? Because that either means A, there's injuries, so that would maybe be a bad thing. But B, I really do like his potential as a tight end. Do you think he's maybe the fact that they're playing Yeboah over him is maybe a little concerning? I mean, I think Ruckert was always maybe more of a project, but I don't know. He's just one of those guys that is completely forgotten in this draft class, but I was excited when they drafted him. I really do think he could turn into something in this offense. Do you think we'll see Ruckert at all out there? Or do you think it's, he'll he'll be riding the bench again.
I think we could if Yeboah is out. Yeboah played some snaps last game, right? So I think
Yeah.
Rucker would take that place. Rucker's had an odd role this year. He's been inactive sometimes. And when he has played, it's mostly been special teams. I don't think he's played on offense since the Dolphins game. So he's kind of not really been able to find a role. And I think the offseason hurt him because, he missed a lot of time. So didn't really get to get his feet wet, get comfortable in the offense. And obviously there's plenty of competition at that position. So without having a full offseason, I think that kind of got him behind a little bit. So maybe I think next year is the year he'll really have a chance to establish himself. And yeah, I mean, even next year, they're still going to have both Uzama and Conklin here, but maybe he at least can get in that third role. But we'll see what happens. I mean, they do have a role clearly for a third tight end because Yeboah's been playing it a little bit, so we'll see what happens.
It'll probably be more of an impact on special teams, but I think the one thing that I have been curious about is, that this offense is designed to at least have a fullback. I mean, you don't have to have one, but you see what Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers do with their 22 personnel offense in terms of having a fullback. And look, Kyle Juszczyk's a complete unicorn, but I was kind of maybe expecting to see Ruckert in that role a little bit at times his rookie year. Maybe we'll see it down the stretch. Now that he's a little bit more acclimated with the playbook, maybe they don't really want to overload him. And maybe they've also decided they don't really need that package, but he's a guy to maybe keep an eye out for since he'll be active in this one. I think, we didn't talk about defensive matchups. I mean, obviously they're all over the place. The Andrews versus Quinnen matchup is certainly going to be fascinating. Although Quinnen hasn't really met his match yet this year. We'll see if Andrews can be up to the task. The Patriots are going to have a good, they're going to prioritize Quinnen Williams and taking him away, but that might open up some options for, John Franklin Myers or whoever steps into Sheldon Ranklin's void. It seems like it might be Solomon Thomas, although you noted on Monday's pod how Nathan Shepard, as critical as we've been of him on this pod, has looked better than Solomon Thomas at times. I mean, how do you think, what are some of your favorite matchups on the defensive side of the football? And then what do you think about that? If the Patriots try to take away Quinnen Williams and double team him, obviously he's shown the ability to deal with it. Who do you think could have an opportunity to shine on this defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, Quinnen Williams has just been such an enforcer this year that he's just attracting everyone's attention on that interior. And I think it really helps out the edge rushers. It helps out the other defensive tackles, helps in the blitz game. So just to have a magnet like that does so much. And the really cool thing about his season is despite all that, he's still winning and producing. So it's not as if, he's gone quiet. We got to look for subtle ways to see his impact. It's still been there. Last week he beat Mitch Morse for a sack, and he hadn't given up a sack all year or since last season. So he's beating elite competition now. So I think he'll be ready for David Andrews, but that'll be a great matchup in the middle there. And then at the tackle spots, I think the edge rushers had a lot of success last game. Bryce Huff got off the edge to create that interception in the first half. And Carl Lawson had a sack in this game. Franklin Myers had a sack. Even Jacob Martin had a strip sack in his last game as a Jet. So they had a lot of success at the pass rush, and it worked off the coverage. So we'll see what happens because this is, we'll see the adjustments the Patriots make because they gave up 6 sacks last game. I think you want to, account for that and maybe leave in some more help. But at the same time, Patriots need guys running routes to threaten this secondary that also did a really good job last game. So I'm very curious to see the approach the Patriots choose to take. Are they going to try to expand on what they did last time and just continue to be ground and pound, dink and dunk? Or are they going to maybe take some chances and try to be a little more aggressive on this Jets defense? Because, as much as you don't want to do that, the safe approach didn't really work too well last game either, because again, they really only had 13 points outside of the ones gifted to them through the field position. And they should have had a lot of turnovers too, and they really lucked out in that area. So the offense really didn't work last game. So I'm wondering if they're going to stick with that, or maybe they try to, get a little bit more max protect in there, take some shots down the field. Because before that Jets game, they were playing very aggressively with Mac Jones. He was number one in terms of the percentage of his passes that were deep passes prior to that Jets game. We did not see a lot of it in that one. So maybe they go back to that. And quick sidebar, something that's really interesting I was thinking about. When when two teams play each other in such a short amount of time, it's just such a unique thing because when teams play twice and it's, months apart, like when the Jets play the Dolphins again at the end of the year versus that week 5 game, it's almost like it's a different team you're facing the second time around, right? Like there's so much time in
Right.
between it. Like the momentum changes, your philosophy changes, the injuries change, guys go out, guys come back. So it's like a completely different game plan. Like you look at that first game a little bit, but there's so much that has changed since then that you're almost focusing on all that more. But when you play 2 games so closely like this, it's like you're facing the same team still because not much has changed since then. Both the Jets and Patriots played 1 game. And then injury wise, there are a couple guys coming in and out, but it's not significantly different. So it's almost like you're playing them, the same exact team. So I think you look to that first game more so than you would when you're playing another division team and it's, months apart. So, games like this, I think, will feature more adjusting based on that previous game than usual. So I don't know. It's interesting to just think about how the game planning is different when the game is closer, when the 2 games are closer to one another.
Yeah, and it'd be better if the best game planner of all time, maybe, or maybe not.
Right.
I mean, he's more better. I mean, it's more of adjustments maybe from Belichick, but it would help if he didn't have to have a bye as well to also sit and prepare
I
for
will
this one.
say
But
though, I was curious to see how he's done out of buys since Brady retired, and he's lost both of his post bye games over the
oh,
last 2 years without Brady, and those
well,
were against Drew Lock's Broncos and Carson Wentz's Colts. So I'm
never
just
mind
saying,
then. Yeah, I mean, look,
maybe he's not the master adjuster out of the bye anymore.
well, yeah, the halftime adjustments is what I meant, but yeah, in terms of game planning, obviously, but yeah, this is certainly a different Patriots team. And when you look at, Robert Saleh has it plastered all over the Jets locker room facility this week of do right longer. And he's absolutely correct, especially in this game, because this is a team I feel the Jets know they're better than. They're trying to exercise some demons, and certainly it's going to be a hostile environment. But do you think this is the most hostile environment that Zach will have played in this Sunday, going into New England,
In
first
his
place of all?
NFL career,
Yes. I think it has to
um,
be. It has to be because it's
yeah, I
look,
think
it's
so.
Boston fans
I mean, he
on
played
the
there last
road,
year. It wasn't the same stakes though, obviously.
right? And both teams are, as it stands, I mean, in the playoffs.
Going to
So
be
it's not like
pretty cold, it looks like.
it'll be like 40 degrees and sunny, I think, from what I saw. So, but anyway, but like that whole do right longer thing, uh, is completely right because even if the Jets, throw an interception or they give up a touchdown, they just can't let that snowball. They just have to continue to they've shown it all season long, the ability to have that short-term memory and respond to adversity. But I think the thing that you saw from Zach in that game was things started to go wrong and he imploded and he let it snowball. And that's going to be big for him in this one because Belichick, look, they might get a strip sack or he might throw a dumb interception, but he has to have that short-term memory and play with it because the Jets are the better team. So he doesn't have to feel like he did as a rookie, where it's like you make that one interception, now you're playing catch up. This defense is elite. And so even if they're down early or Zach makes a dumb play, he just has to not worry about the past. He just has to keep trying to make the best decision on each play, which might be a more conservative approach. It might mean throwing the ball and playing boring football and settling for field goals or punting a lot or taking sacks. But that's the big key for Zach in this one is to just not try to be the hero. Even though he's going to have to throw downfield, it's just about measuring those risks, with aggression. And I think that he showed he can play a similar style of football against Buffalo, but it's a different defense and a different demon that the Jets have to slay. And finally, I mean, I guess we can hop into our predictions. Actually, wait, there's one more thing. Where the Jets are better. I mean, we kind of already did this, but we've done it at every preview pod. Maybe don't break it up. But where the Jets are better, I don't have the what we saved from the last time we did this between these two teams. But we can rapid fire this one, Michael. Okay.
All
Quarterback.
right.
Who would you say? I mean, I feel like
I
you
guess
want
it's
to
a
put this.
wash.
I would say this is a wash.
Yeah.
All right, running back.
Mm,
Stevenson and Harris versus Robinson and Carter. I might give this one to the Pats, but it's close.
That's close.
I think
Let's say
Ramondre Stevenson
wash.
is.
Or you want to give it to them?
I'd give it to the.
All
It's
right.
real. It's real close, but just
You're
because I
leaning
feel like
Pats, so let's go Pats.
yeah, it's just because I think Ramondre Stevenson is a damn. I mean, my Jets have great running backs too, but I think Stevenson is extremely underrated. Receivers, this one's obviously Jets. Tight end, the
Jets.
both. Yeah, I mean, clearly based off
Based on
production.
how they're used in producing, I would say
But
Jets.
all right, let's do. Yeah, we split it between tackles and interior offensive line, right? So tackles, Dwayne
Um,
Brown and Cedric Ogbuehi versus Trent Brown and who's their left tackle?
Yadni
Right,
Kajust.
isn't it Isaiah Wynn or is he out?
I'm look. They have my guard right now. Just looking
Oh,
at the depth chart.
well, either way, I mean, I think the Jets tackles have certainly been decimated by injuries, but they've held up all right. I mean, this one's also a little hard to call. I don't think Trent Brown has been very good in New England.
Actually, they do have Trent Brown. Oh yeah, well Trent Brown and Isaiah Wynn at
Yeah,
the tackle. Wait a minute,
yeah.
I'm looking at this last game. All right, I'm gonna get one more look at it here. I think it's Trent Brown, left tackle, Cole Strange, left guard, Andrews at center, right guard Onwenu, right tackle was actually Marcus Cannon last time.
So who would you give the
So
edge to?
I guess we have to give it a
For being completely,
Patriots.
yeah. I mean, I know.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to bet on
we can't say
Guehi.
the Jets when we're on the
Yeah,
plan Z with the tackle the
yeah.
way he.
There was some hesitancy there because I think that Patriots tackles haven't been too great this season either.
They have
But
not been very good, but it would be too biased to say like, yeah, the Jets and their way he made a couple nice blocks last game. No, he was
hey,
good last game,
he
but
was definitely good. And
he was good for sure. But we
well, let me ask
can't
you
go
this,
off one
not
game, you
to
know.
not to get off on a sidebar here, but even if Max Mitchell's ready to go, do you think there's any thought into giving Abuehi another week just because maybe you don't want to mess with that chemistry between him and Herbig? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
certainly in the
mean,
run game.
I guess assuming the way he plays in this game, I guess we'll see how it goes in this one. If he plays well again, I mean, why mess with it? You know, if he eventually has a bad game, maybe you just pull it at that point. But until then, I guess you could roll with it. You know, especially just let Mitchell get completely healthy. Um, yeah, I say roll with it until he has a bad game.
All right, interior offensive line. I mean, the Pats do get David Andrews back, who's great. I know Cole Strange has also been pretty good as a rookie. But the Jets also, Herbig has really come on. He's been big. Laken Tomlinson's been up and down, but certainly on paper, the best out of these guards. And then McGovern, who, you know what, he's actually had a pretty good season. Maybe I should walk back some of my anti McGovern takes. I still think he's a little overrated, but he's a good fit for this system, and he's held up this year. Who would you give the edge to into your offensive line?
I think until Lake and Tomlinson start stepping it up, I think we have to go Patriots.
All right, the Patriots take the lead here. Let's go. I guess. How do you want to split this? Okay, defensive tackle, and then we'll do edge. So Judon will count as
Jets.
an edge. Yeah, not even close. I didn't want to, edge.
Edge is harder because I mean Judon's probably the best player between both. I mean, he is the best player between both teams, but just the Jets' depth at edge is something that's really unique. And there aren't a lot of teams that have the same depth. I don't think the Patriots are one of them.
Yeah,
So it's
I mean, think about.
best player versus depth here.
I would go with the Jets here.
Yeah.
And I gave the Patriots the running back, so I'm trying not to be biased. While Judon is amazing, would you rather have Matt Judon or Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Huff, John Franklin Myers, Michael Clements? I mean, like this, like you said, the depth that the Jets have allows them to constantly be rotating these guys, and so that they're constantly fresh. And it allows teams can maybe scheme to try to stop Matt Judon. It hasn't really worked out too well this year, but you can scheme to try to stop one guy. You can't scheme to stop all these guys that the Jets have. So I'd give the Jets the edge here.
Yeah, I agree.
Linebacker, also Jets.
Yeah.
For once, I kind of feel like the Jets actually have a good linebacking core. Cornerback, Pats have some good corners, but this one's not even close.
Yeah.
And then safety, you could maybe go with the Pats, McCourty and Duggar
I
versus
feel like the
Whitehead and
Pat
Joyner.
safeties just look good to us because every time they play us, they
Yeah,
get 3 interceptions.
we can give them
So,
safety. I mean,
I don't
who
know.
would you go
Old
with?
Devin McCourty, Kyle Duggar, who I think is going to play in this game. It's just hard to give it to the Jets because like they've done okay. Joyner and Whitehead, I think that's an important part of why the defense is good because they've avoided being, big liabilities. But they're still probably the weak link of the defense. So I don't know. When we start debating like this, maybe go Wash.
Yeah. All right, we can go Wash here. I think I like what Whitehead brings. I think Joyner has been better than what I thought he was going to be after the first few weeks of the year, but certainly the Jets could be looking for an upgrade there in the offseason. Yeah, also you said old McCourty. It's like, all right, well, old Joyner as well.
Right.
But we'll go Wash there. All right, into the predictions. As I was starting to say, I think the Jets win this one pretty handily. We can do, what do you want to do? Random predictions and then the score? Do you want to do best case, worst case? How do you want to do this, Michael?
We can do random predictions first.
All right. You want to hear mine? I already thought of this earlier in the week and I'm going to write it down. I hit my last random prediction. We gave 2 and I almost hit both of them. In fact, I think I would have, but we kind of changed it. I said Sauce Gardner interception. We hit that one. And then I was originally going to say they're going to drop a big trick play. Because I was like, this is the type of game for LaFleur to do it. You could maybe count the fake punt, but that's a stretch. So then we changed it to, we had changed it to a non-quarterback pass, which we would have had maybe, but Wilson ended up throwing it, and then he almost fumbled it. Garrett Wilson on the end around against the Bills, if you remember. So I went 1 for 2, but I think that's the first one that I did write it down. Finally, I'm looking at it. We hit that. Michael, you also had Jordan Whitehead getting a turnover, although it was on a fumble. So I don't know if we give you that, but here's my random prediction for this week. I've thought about it. I feel pretty confident in it. Maybe I shouldn't say confident. As confident as you can get one of these. Michael Carter, pick 6.
Redemption.
He's getting redemption for the last pick 6 that got called back. I just see Mac Jones throwing one of those passes to the flat or just one of those underneath passes where Ricardo can get a read on it and jump it. I see Michael Carter II getting a pick 6. Very similar to the type of pass that he intercepted that got called back. You got a random prediction?
I have a few. Okay. So to start out, I'm going to go Uzomah touchdown.
Okay, Uzomah touchdown.
Pretty specific one here. So I think Elijah Moore will have 6+ targets and he'll have 1 rushing attempt in the first quarter.
You're gonna have to keep talking or else everybody's gonna listen to the typing noises. I'll write these down because I always forget them the next week.
Okay, I got locked in on your typing for a second. All right, so number 3 here. Gonna turn my attention to the special teams. I'm gonna say Braxton Berrios gets a 30+ yard punt return. Patriots got their backup punter in the game. Jake Bailey's gonna miss this one. So I think Jets maybe catch the punt unit by surprise.
All right, so MC2 pick 6. You gave a few. Let me think of some. These are all off the top of my head, and maybe that gives them some value because they're the first thing that comes to mind. I'll say Zach Wilson rushing touchdown, like that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
As I'm typing it away. One more. Let me think. What's a good one? I don't.
Anything we haven't done a defense. Oh yeah, you did one.
Yeah, I have
maybe 6. Something defensive line related or front 7.
I'm thinking about it. I'll say the Jets get a strip sack on Mac Jones
and recovered.
Okay? Yeah,
they did have a strip sack last game.
Strip sack,
not converted.
Plus recovery on Mac Jones.
That's something, a random thing here. The Jets have not had good fumble luck the past few weeks.
No, not at all. We talked about that. They got a
Bills game. So how many? 2 out of the 3 they lost in the Bills game. They got back Garrett Wilson's, but Zach Wilson's and Josh Allen's went to the Bills. So that's 2 out of 3 they lost. And then the Patriots game, they lost the only one. So that's 1 out of 4 the last 2 games. So they have not been great with the fumble recoveries.
No. Should I be more specific on that one? Should I assign it to a specific player? There's 2 in mind that I have.
You have to pick a player.
I'll go Huff. I think Huff is
Okay.
the safe choice. I think
Going back to back.
Huff strip sack is a good choice. But I do kind of buy into the Jermaine Johnson stock. I do feel like he's going to keep getting better and better and be kind of a big contributor down the stretch. Also, Carl Lawson is quietly, also having a great year. He doesn't necessarily get all the sacks and the attention, but I think he's such a big part about this defensive line. I almost gave it to him, but I think Bryce Huff, I like that. One of those third downs, Max steps up, he gets his hand on it, and then somebody falls on it.
He did get his hand on the ball in the first game. So
yeah,
he's
it caused the
close to getting
interception.
it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go score predictions here, Michael. What do we feel? I mean, I imagine we're both going to predict a win here, unless you really want to follow the coins lead. Although you were talking to me about how if they win, they're in trouble in this one. Do you want to explain it?
Oh yeah, I mean, we got the battle of two superstitions in this game. We got the undefeated white on black uniforms going against the 9-0 coin, who predicts that the Jets will lose this game. So one of those is going to come to an end this week, and then you go into the Bears game next week, and you're talking about either the Jets lose this game, and the coin predicts the Jets will lose against the Bears as well. So that has you terrified that the coin is 10-0. But if the Jets win this game, they're now 6-0 in the white on black uniforms, with a very strong trend that they're only good with those uniforms. And then next week they're going all black against the Bears. So you got to come out of the white on black uniforms and go back into the losing all black set. So you got to be worried about the Bears game. Either way,
that's just fear. That's so the superstitions like that. I mean, I used to watch football like that, where I'd be
good
like,
analysis. This is analytics.
I used to watch football like that, where it's like, okay, I got to sit on this one part of the couch because like all those dumb superstitions. And now it's like, I used to, when I was like younger, it'd be like all these I'm trying to remember, like the 2015 season. I remember I used to like close all the apps on my phone, and like I wouldn't look at Twitter, or I wouldn't look at fantasy football. Like, cause like one time I did, and they gave up a touchdown or something dumb like that. Or like, I remember I watched down the stretch of the 2015 year. I was wearing like a USC Robert Woods jersey while I was watching it, because I started wearing it for no reason. I forget exactly why I wore it. I don't even know. But on the start of that win streak, and so I kept it going. All that stuff, to me, I don't buy into it. I mean, obviously it's all bullshit. It's just, I get it's part of being a fan, but it's just fear to me. This Jet seems good. We don't need any of that shit. We don't need our lucky pants or whatever, our lucky whatever.
I don't know. I would hold off judgment to see if that's required or not.
Yeah, we'll see. Although the CYJ coin flip also predicted a loss to the Pats.
That's true. But we had Bears win, right?
Yeah, we did, and a Super Bowl loss.
All right, so we'll rely on that coin flip instead.
Yeah. All right. Score prediction, though, I do feel like the Jets are going to win this one fairly handedly. I think they have a great game. It's not going to be an easy game per se. I don't think maybe they have a huge offensive explosion. But I think they win this by multiple scores. I'm trying to formulate a pick off the top of my head. Michael, maybe give your analysis why I think of a score, because I didn't really think of one.
All right, I have a score prediction.
All right, go ahead.
I'm going to say Jets 19, Patriots 18.
Whoa, this is a tight game. You think it's going to be that close? 19-18?
Yep.
I'm going to say, all right, you want one more random prediction? This is a really bold one. The Jets aren't going to give up a touchdown in this game.
Okay.
So I'm going to say that they'll give up some field goals. I think they're going to hold if they are in a bad spot. I'll say Patriots 6. Or no, hold on. Patriots 9, Jets 23. You like that?
All right. Yeah, it's like
three field goals, 2 touchdowns, 23-9.
Low scoring kind of blowout. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the type of game you're looking at. A low scoring blowout is a good way to phrase it, because I went back and watched it, and it was just like, okay, the Patriots had a few good plays, but really they only scored that one touchdown at the start of the second half, and the Jets were in bad field position and gave up a big play, and then Pat scored an offensive PI that wasn't called. But it's like, you go back and watch it, it's like the Jets defense kept making stop after stop, creating turnovers, holding up in bad spots. The thing that really screwed them in that game was the third downs, because for their first and second down success against this Patriots team was was great. It was just on third downs they kept kind of getting burned, and then the drive would extend a little bit longer. But they really weren't. I never really felt like the Patriots were ever in control of that game offensively. It was really just the Jets offense giving the ball away. So I just feel like the Jets playing this game a few weeks later are going to hold them down. Maybe the Pats will, get some field goals or whatnot, but I think this is going to be a big defensive day for the Jets, and then the Jets otherwise will just ride a Zach Wilson taking care of the football. They're going to have to run the ball, but I don't think you're going to see the type of game where Zach Wilson is barely throwing. I think he is going to have to throw, and he's going to have to throw downfield a little bit and take some of those shots. It's just about limiting the risks that he takes. So I don't know. I'm feeling good about this one. I think our records overall in terms of picking these pretty good. I think the only ones I've gotten wrong were the Bengals and the Bills games. Oh, and the Pats games, I think. So Bengals, Bills, and Pats. So we, like the Jets, are 6-3. I think you might be 5-4. I'm pretty sure you predicted one of those games off. But anyway, Michael, I can't wait for this Sunday. I guess is that you want to wrap it up? Is there anything else you wanna throw out here before we part ways?
I have a random thing to discuss.
All right, go ahead.
Would you like to hear about a Jets related dream I had last night?
These always scare me.
Oh no, it's funny.
We'll see.
Okay, so Jets are playing the Bills in Buffalo, and the game starts, and it's like the broadcast starts, and the Jets are already on their 5-yard line to start the game with no context or explanation whatsoever.
Okay.
It just starts, and that's where they're at. There's no pregame or anything. They're just there immediately.
Okay.
And then first play, Braden Mann punts it. It's a 10-yard punt, just 10 yards in the air. He punts it. And then Bills get the ball first play, and they throw a pick six. The Jets come back the other way. That's it. That's the entire thing.
Wait, was this in Buffalo? Like, is this
in Buffalo?
In the future?
Yes, this is in the future.
So, okay, first play of the game at the 5-yard line, we punt it 10 yards, and we get a pick six.
Yes.
All right.
Look forward to that.
Yeah, we'll pencil that in for one of the random predictions.
That's my random prediction.
I think a Braden Mann 10-yard punt isn't a crazy.
That's not out of the question
for a Buffalo game, maybe. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll write that down, Michael, and we'll keep an eye on that for a few weeks from now. Anyways, you can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter. Myself, Ben W. Blessington, Michael _Nania. Go to jetsxfactor.com for the best place to go for Jets content. Please review, subscribe, rate on iTunes, subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube. I think that's it. All right. Any other last thoughts that aren't Jets dreams that I have to be concerned about?
I thought you were going to describe your Jets related dream. You don't have one?
I've had some Jets dreams before. I'm trying to think. I normally get the Jets dream that I normally have is like in the off season. It'll be like May, and I'll have like a dream that it's like opening day or something. I'm all excited, and then I wake up and it's like, fuck, we got 5 more months. You know what I mean? Like something like that. I don't really have too many. Or that like
had that.
Yeah, or like I'm going to the game or something, and then I get to the stadium. I don't know, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh, that sucks. It's like you ever have those dreams?
One that I feel like I have fairly often is like I kind of like the main point or the main common denominator between them is that like somehow I miss watching the game. It's like I don't know. It's like a fear of not being able to watch the game. I don't know.
Yeah. So if any psychologists who listen to this podcast want to psychoanalyze Michael's Jet streams, just feel free to shoot us a tweet. All right. I guess that'll wrap it up, Michael. Very excited for this Sunday. A little bit nervous, I guess, but it's one game at a time. They can bounce back if they lose, but I like you said, I think this is just such an opportunity for a statement. If they do win this game, the chatter about the Jets is going to get very loud because all those posts are going to come out. The Jets are first place in the AFC East, and I think that's really when maybe the broader end. People have really already woken up to the Jets, but will be. I think if they win this game, they'll be taken even more seriously. Not just in terms of as a team and making the playoffs, but maybe even in terms of winning the AFC East. They'll be 7-3. They'll have the tiebreakers over the Bills for 2 weeks at least. And we'll see. The Bills are probably going to be favored in every other game they play this year, but you never know. That is the one thing about being one of the best teams in the league is every week you get the opposing team's best shot. Even if you're a losing team or a bad team, like we saw this last year with the Jets when they played the Bucks, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, this is our Super Bowl. Let's see if we can beat the Bucks. From the player's perspective, I know the fans are probably cheering for a loss at that point, but they're, never know when the Bills could drop another game. They're playing in a neutral field this time. I mean, I know, Michael, you were thinking that maybe the travel, maybe that throws off Josh Allen. Who knows? But the Jets certainly have a real legitimate shot at winning this AFC East if they win on Sunday. So very excited. I don't know the last time they entered a game with stakes quite like this. Probably sometime. I mean, every week we say that. So probably go back to 2 weeks ago. But in terms of a real opportunity to do something in the standings and make a real impact, probably something back in 2015. Just a game in Gillette, Michael, first place the AFC East. I mean, you can't draw it up better than this. But for this Jets magical season to continue, I do feel like they'll need a win, because I feel like then I'll look back on, oh God, I can't believe we got swept by the Pats in that great year. So
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, like you said, it's when you're 6-3, you can lose one game, and your season is definitely not over. But at the same time, it makes the path a lot difficult if you lose this game. Getting swept by a team that you're competing against for a wild card, it kind of drops you out of the division race, so that takes you out of, or takes away another path to the playoffs. So it gets a lot harder. This is definitely a high stakes game, not a must win game, but it's very high stakes.
So with that being said, Michael, we'll be back on Monday, for real this time. Talking about, actually, it might be Sunday night or Monday. Recapping. It'll be Sunday night, but it'll probably be pretty late, depending on win or loss. If it's a win, Michael and I like to get on pretty quickly and talk about it. If it's a loss, it's like, all right, I'll talk to you after the Sunday night football game or during it. But it'll be up Sunday night at some point. Hopefully, we're celebrating a win. Otherwise, you'll be listening to a therapy session. But we'll be back then. Thank you for listening. Go Jets.